Sometimes purification is beautiful and lovely and embracing, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's turning into a dark alley late at night and finding some rough characters who think you owe them money. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about purity today. And in the meditation, you heard or perhaps experienced some of that brilliant brightness of the manifest absolute. And I call it a brilliant brightness. It's the color we'd most associate would be white, but it's really the combination of every color. The manifest absolute is all that's manifest, all that's in a kind of a form reality. I don't have a better term than that right now. But that brilliancy really has the ability to touch and to help convert, to help eliminate whatever is excessive or outdated. A lot of the work that purity does is through conversion, by meeting identity, by meeting some of the, let's say, negative stories we hold about ourselves, negative beliefs about ourselves and the world. And the purity meets those and challenges them with both love and with a demand for truth. The spiritual path is a path of walking truth. It doesn't mean that if I'm walking the path, I always want everything to be my way or that I get everything I want. That's not what we're referring to. But when we're on the path, we're on a path that's a deepening into ourselves, a penetrating in. One of the early Zen masters in the U.S. was Suzuki Roshi, who founded San Francisco Zen Center and some other locations. And one of the teachings he had was he talked about Zazen being like a triangle, a pyramid, where the point of the pyramid or triangle is pointed towards our hara. So we're going from the world, we're going inward, as Zenshin was bringing up. And when we go inward, we're also going outward. So it ends up being the same movement, but our inner becomes the outer, and the outer becomes the inner in a way that's seamless. But the purity is really giving us the opportunity to release old stories, to release outdated beliefs, convictions of the world. We carry a lot of that out of duty and also a kind of affinity. We subscribe sometimes to opinions in our family, in our friend community, and maybe even in our country. We have viewpoints that are shared, biases, we could say, as well. And all of those at some point come into question. We have to look at all of those to see what's true today. Many of our patterns were started when we were young, and they were reasonable decisions or actions, reactions we had or took at that young age. But we have to look and see, today, are these still as wise as they were then? And that's where we do updating, whereas we're practicing, we're looking at all of these behaviors and attitudes, and particularly when we do like a purity meditation, typically one of the effects is going to be that whatever is ready for purification is going to start arising in your memory, in your world. One of the great ways to practice and see what issues we need to engage in life is simply observing our life. We're going to see people bringing up a similar issue or the same issue with us in many different forms. And if we're tracking what's going on in life, we'll see, everybody is mentioning this one aspect about me. And that gives us our cue. This is something to look at. This needs updating. And again, whatever is false, whatever is untrue, whatever's outdated, we have to be willing to let go of and change. And it can be difficult because sometimes we have a lot invested in these personality viewpoints. We have a lot invested in how the world works, how we see that the world works. So working with purity, opening to the purity of the absolute, is going to shake us up to some extent. I remember when I first started doing the Theravadan practices maybe 20 years ago, and I heard about how the concentration meditation practices were called purification of mind practices. Well, purification of mind sounded really great to me. I thought, oh, and I had this image of sitting in this beautiful meadow with wildflowers and butterflies tickling my cheeks as this purification. And what I didn't realize was that is true. Sometimes purification is beautiful and lovely and embracing, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's turning into a dark alley late at night and finding some rough characters who think you owe them money. Sometimes what we have to deal with, what we have to work with, can be very challenging. It can be very close to us and very difficult to engage. But ultimately, this is where our determination, our enlightenment drive will carry us into these difficult places to where we can convert whatever's unhealthy, whatever's dysfunctional, outdated in us to something that's more current, more relevant, more true. And by doing this, we also go back and we'll examine the structure, the start of these patterns. Some of them are from early life. I mentioned before, they could be brilliant decisions when we're young. But at this age, maybe they're not so brilliant. And that's what we have the opportunity to look at. So the way one works with this, if you have an issue that's come up as a result of practicing with purification, you look at the issue. Say it's an issue how you deal with anger, just as an example. And you realize you react with anger towards these certain situations fairly regularly. So trace it back. When do you first remember having this reaction, this response? And you may land upon a memory that reveals that experience where you chose this as a standard response. And really examine that dynamic, the interplay between the people when that was decided by you. And once you feel like you've really understood the dynamic, replay the scene with yourself today, with the wisdom and life experience you carry. What would you do? How would you react today? And that creates a new template, a new way of meeting that same triggering event. And you'll notice what happens once that happens in the earliest memory, a later memory will arise where you applied the same old strategy. And you do the same. You examine the memory fully, embrace it. And once you have thoroughly digested it, you replay it with yourself today. How would you respond, react? And by doing this, we work up the chain of memories. We're changing the way we react to this certain situation. We're also changing our identity, because our identity is composed of these convictions and beliefs. When we change a conviction or belief, we change the equation of who I am. And so we become a different person. Our history becomes different. And we have options, we have choices in reacting to a triggering event. Let me pause here and see if there's any questions. I think the love is the overall holding and can respond in different ways through the different Brahma Viharas and in other ways. The purity is a specific function of the love. And a lot of the purity's benefits are purification by contact. That simply by entering into the purity, we can, let it meet these places in us that are old, outdated, and just simply by contact, if they're digested enough, the purity will cut them loose or will convert them. And others, the purity is going to point out what's ready or becoming ready to be worked and engaged. So the purity doesn't have the same supportive quality. It's more about change and conversion, as I see it.